Three Rotters reforms, but Auckland's mayor says super city ratepayers are still getting ripped off. Ram raids and robberies with some offenders as young as 7. So what can we do about it? We talked to an expert who says youth offenders are skipping school after lockdown. Masks no more, immunocompromised Kiwis say easier exemptions mean they'll stay in. Not your usual job offer. An Aussie electrician battling worker shortages offers a signing bonus, a weekend away and more to try and track down tradies. And the cops are warning potential pet buyers to beware of a cryptocurrency con. You can watch us live on Facebook, Freeview Channel 50 and Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5, kia ora tātou, I'm Evie Ashton. A mayor who was on the government's Three Waters working group is pleased most of its recommendations have been adopted. Councils will now have a non-financial shareholding in the 4 new water entities. Lower Hutt Mayor Campbell Barry says different councils will be able to put forward ideas within their entities.
That does give those more local communities a voice in these entities, which we all acknowledge are large, and that there are always potentially some challenges in getting that localised voice through.
Campbell Barry says while councils differed on what the changes should look like, they all agreed change was needed. The Health Ministry says people who misuse new mask exemptions could face fines or other penalties. Some doctors have criticised the exemption card process as too loose, as it allows people to apply for exemptions for almost any reason, from asthma to dry eyes to wearing glasses. A ministry spokesperson says the application system will be robust and there'll be checks against misuse. One Lower Hutt woman, Anne, says people shouldn't be allowed an exemption for what she calls frivolous reasons.
And I think it behoves us to protect ourselves, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. It's too much of a me society. I think we should be thinking about others.
The Health Ministry says the cards will be anchored to medical records and will have to be signed off by a doctor. Russian missiles have struck the Ukrainian capital Kyiv during a visit to the city by the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The missiles hit a building in a residential district, leaving several people injured. Mr. Guterres told of his shock.
I'm in Kyiv today. 2 rockets have exploded in Kyiv. I was shocked to be informed that 2 rockets had exploded in the city where I am. So this is a dramatic war, and we absolutely need to end this war, and we absolutely need to have a solution for this war.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the attack shows a lot about Russia's true attitude to global institutions. People who say they were bullied, harassed or abused at Fire and Emergency New Zealand are sceptical about a Public Service Commission review of the organisation announced today. They say abusers remain at FENZ and nothing will change until they're gone. Several complainants and their colleagues told RNZ they're worried the review will be a box-ticking exercise that won't bring lasting change unless the abusers and those they say who are covering up for them are held accountable and lose their jobs. The Professional Firefighters Union has welcomed the report, which it says has been a long time coming and is necessary. The review is due to be completed in November. 6 young people, the youngest aged just 12, have been referred to Youth Aid after several vehicles were broken into and stolen on Kapiti Coast. Police say early this morning they received several calls about the group disturbing cars around Waikanai Beach. After fleeing in 2 vehicles, police later located the group, who again tried to flee on foot but were caught. The oldest member of the group was 16. Kapiti Mana Area Commander Inspector Tracy Thompson says it's the latest in a spate of vehicle thefts in the area. And British comedian James Corden has announced he'll be leaving The Late Late Show next year. He said he wanted to pursue other opportunities. Corden has hosted the US-based talk show since 2015 when he took over from another British comedian and actor, Craig Ferguson. He's become a household name in the US, presenting showbiz awards such as the Tony and Grammy Awards. During his time on The Late Late Show, he introduced carpool karaoke, in which celebrities such as Adele and Prince Harry sang in a car. To sport, and the All Blacks loose forward Luke Jacobson will captain the Chiefs against the Reds in Brisbane tonight and believes the hosts will provide a stiffer challenge than the Waratahs, who they beat last weekend. With regular co-captain Sam Cane returning to New Zealand for the birth of his first child, Jacobson will lead the Chiefs for the second time this season.
Had a reasonably good performance last week. I'm trying to flow into this week and back it up again. We know that the Reds are going to be probably a step up from the Waratahs, but we've had a good week and we're excited.
Also tonight, the Blues play Western Force in Perth. Meanwhile, the All Blacks will play Scotland for the first time in 5 years in November at Murrayfield as part of the Autumn Nations series. The Wellington Phoenix can book a place in the A-League playoffs with a win over high-flying Melbourne Victory tonight. With 3 regular season games left, the fifth-placed Phoenix need just 1 win to assure them of a top 6 spot. Victory are third on the ladder, already assured of making the playoffs. Meanwhile, third-place Chelsea's drawn 1-1 with sixth-placed Manchester United in the Premier League. And Tiger Woods has played a practice round at the Southern Hills Country Club in Oklahoma, the site of next month's PGA Championship. Woods reportedly intends to play in the second major of the season next month. The 15-time major champion made a return to golf earlier this month at the Masters, 14 months after a major car crash. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, the miraculous carbon sinks that peat bogs represent. The almost as miraculous achievement of launching a Francis Bacon exhibition in Moscow in 1988. And Stuart Murdoch on the miraculous success, or at least the churchly origins, of beloved indie bands Belle and Sebastian. Call Kim Hillaho. Join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint next with Nick Trubridge. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday. For Northland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and a few showers, mainly in the east. Mostly fine for Auckland, a few showers, mainly north of the city. From Waikato to Wellington, also Bay of Plenty in the central high country. Fine weather apart from areas of cloud or fog morning and night. Cloudy periods for Gisborne with isolated showers. For Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, fine spells increasing this afternoon and isolated showers about the Wairua district that are clearing overnight. Mostly fine for Bulla and Westland. Cloud and showers are developing from the glaciers southwards this evening and may spread farther north tomorrow morning. For Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago, Southland and Fiordland, fine apart from areas of cloud or fog morning and night. However, it's mostly cloudy with showers about the fjords. And the weather is mostly cloudy for Te Kohu, the Chatham Islands. It's 7 minutes past 5. We'll have news headlines for you at 5:30.
Thanks, Evie. Kia ora, good evening. This is Checkpoint. I'm Nick Trubridge. The government is forging ahead with its 3 waters reforms and says it's time everyone else got on board. It means drinking, waste and stormwater systems will come under 4 massive water entities. However, the government's offered an olive branch to councils angry at the plan, saying they'll get a shareholding in those entities. That change has been introduced to appease councils' concerns about asset ownership, but it hasn't pleased all of them. Our political reporter Annika Smith has more.
It's full steam ahead for 3 waters. The government has agreed to adopt nearly all of the recommendations from a working group on the reforms. Local government minister Nanaya Mahuta says it's now time to get on with it.
I think we're at a point now where we can just say it's important to move forward, and we've taken on board to the greatest extent possible the most significant concerns of the sector.
The biggest change to the proposals is a new shareholding model, which boils down to voting rights on any future sale or privatisation of water assets. Councils will have 1 share per 50,000 person population. Smaller areas like Stratford, Carterton or Wairoa will get 1 share. Auckland Council, which looks after a population of 1.7 million people, will get 35 shares. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff still thinks Auckland ratepayers will get ripped off.
We still believe that the model that is being put forward doesn't serve the needs of Aucklanders.
Mayor of Lower Hutt, Campbell Barry, was on the working group. He's more optimistic, saying the government's adoption of nearly all of the group's suggestions shows it's responded to local concerns.
I'm hopeful that this is a bit of a reset for us to be able to get on with what is such a huge challenge for all of New Zealand.
Whanganui Mayor Hamish McDowell remains opposed to the reforms. He doesn't believe Three Waters, even in its new form, is best for his city.
My opposition to the Three Waters reforms has been based around particularly Wanganui, kaupapa Wanganui issues, and while this has addressed some of my broader concerns, those Wanganui issues still remain there.
The Three Waters reforms have been met with fierce opposition in Parliament. Both National and ACT have promised to scrap them if elected to power. Nanaia Mahuta has asked the parties to support extra protections against privatisation, which would require at least 3/4 of Parliament to agree before any sale or merger could be done. It's a call that won't be met.
No, we won't. We're not going to buy into this.
The only party talking about taking these assets out of ratepayers' hands is Labour.
The co-governance arrangements remain largely unchanged off the back of the working group's recommendations. Mana whenua and councils will be given an equal number of seats on a representation group, which set the entity's strategic direction but have no say in operational matters. The legislation will head to the House in the middle of the year, and the government plans to have the 4 new water entities up and running by July 2024.
It's 10 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai, you're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Oranga Tamariki says almost all the children involved in ram raids in recent weeks are not in school. Smash and grabs using a car seem to have increased recently, with police saying they are often carried out by young people looking for thrills or content for TikTok. Yesterday, police revealed 4 children, including a 7-year-old, had been caught after breaking into a mall in Hamilton at 1 a.m. In that case, they didn't use a car to get in, but smashed their way through a glass door. Inspector Andrea Macbeth told us it was shocking to find kids so young out shoplifting in the dead of night. She said in some cases their parents were not in a suitable state to look after their children. Ben Hannafin is Oranga Tamariki's Youth Justice Director. I spoke with him a short time ago and asked him what he thinks is behind the current spike in youth crime.
I guess the first thing to point out is that the youth crime's actually been declining really rapidly over the last 10 years, particularly over the last 5 years. It's sort of down about 60% at the moment, but that doesn't take away from what you're saying, which has been that spike over the last couple of months. What's driving it? The kids that we deal with have a lot of complexities that most teenagers don't have to work their way through. So 80% of them are coming from families where there's violence. Over 90% of them have learning difficulties. Almost all of them, with this population from the ram raids, are not in school. So they're suffering a whole lot of challenges and making some bad decisions.
When it comes to the 7-year-old in the Hamilton incident, I mean, what goes through your mind when you hear of someone that age committing a crime of that nature? I've
got a 7-year-old. I can't fathom it. I can't imagine one even getting her up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go and commit an offence like that. So desperately sad. But, we've now got to take this opportunity to wrap around that 7-year-old and their families to help them so these kind of decisions they're making doesn't continue, because the trajectory is never good if that's what they continue to want to do.
So what can you do?
It depends on what the needs are. So those young people will now be referred to us, and I know our team's already meeting with the families and those young people, and they'll be trying to understand what's driven that behaviour. So, like I say, if there's a prevalence of violence in the home, or if there's alcohol and drugs, or there's financial stress, or whatever the drivers that seem to have allowed this behaviour to transpire, we'll be trying to get in supports and some skills to help enable that family to be more functioning, I guess, is the way we want to do it.
So you are working with some of the children involved in, well, A, these ram raids, and B, this situation in Hamilton at the moment?
Yep, everyone who gets arrested we will be working with, yep.
And what are some of the, I guess, trends you're finding about their backgrounds, family makeup, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's probably not surprising. They're coming from families that have got equal challenges than that they're also experiencing. So parents that maybe have experienced the criminal justice system themselves, a high prevalence of alcohol and drugs, not a lot of pro-social encouragement around things like education or opportunities around aspirations that most teenagers kind of look forward to, the idea of study or employment, that they haven't been able to realise those same opportunities.
But when you get involved, I mean, it's ambulance at the bottom of the hill, so to speak, isn't it? The incident's already happened. They've now come into contact with you. So is enough being done by your organisation and others like it to stop this happening in the first place?
Yeah, so it's never too late. So every time a young person comes our way, it's an opportunity to help them go and lead a life that's enabling them to make better choices. The average age of the young people in youth justice is sort of 16, 17, and it offers different opportunities into employment and independent living. With the younger ones, it's more around finding them homes that are stable and warm and loving.
You mentioned a lot of them aren't in school despite their age. So is any work being done to actually reach these children at the household or whatever other care they may be in?
Yes, sorry. So it's kind of a dual thing. We're seeing a lot of young people not returning to school post these lockdowns, but we're also seeing a number of these young people that have been excluded, before the lockdown. So the kind of approach is a bit different depending on which path has led to the exclusion. But no, there's lots of really great community-led initiatives around reconnecting them into school, because school's not just about the routine, it's about the positive experiences with the teachers, the other peer groups, that kind of routine of a discipline. If you're not in school, they're missing all those wonderful opportunities.
Obviously, the recent spate, a big theme has been TikTok. What's your view on that? I mean, should these social media companies be sort of trying to stamp down on this sort of stuff?
I mean, teenagers are impulsive, not just the teenagers in the youth justice system. I think all teenagers have that tendency to be impulsive and make some high-risk decisions. So what we're seeing definitely is a group of peers who are doing these ram raids, posting it almost one-upping another peer group, either groups that they know or don't know, and encouraging them to step it up. And then, of course, now it's in the media and has been for the last week or so. That notoriety has really elevated this whole drive. So, I do think there's a role in the social media landscape, but it does even flow. We've seen it before with fleeing drivers, and before that with aggravated robberies. So it's actually just getting into the families and getting into these young people and helping them understand the consequences and the experiences that victims have when they make these decisions.
So these kids involved in, and I mean they are kids, aren't they? They're all sort of teenage or younger, most of them. When they come into your care or under your stewardship, so to speak, what are some of the things they're saying to you about their backgrounds?
It can be tragic. They can talk a lot about feeling unsafe, not feeling loved. They feel disconnection to things like school. So it's about, what we try to do is expose them to the opportunities that most teenagers kind of work their way through as they grow up, and realising that actually a lot of it's really obtainable. It's not beyond your reach. Getting a job, having a relationship, having good friends, playing sport, all of these things that we kind of take for granted in New Zealand is available to everybody. So it's just it's very bespoke. So all the young people come with very different kind of experiences and backgrounds, and we don't want this kind of cookie cutter. They all go into the same type of program. We want to make sure that it's specific to their needs and to whatever the family kind of aspire to as well.
Do you think these kids have been failed by, well, not just family, but by the system?
Well, when you're committing a ram raid in the middle of the night, definitely so, but it's not beyond redemption. Today's another day to try and help them make some better decisions. So they're still young, their minds are still very much malleable, they're just teenagers. So there's all this opportunity still to help them make some better decisions as they grow up.
That was Oranga Tamaraki's Youth Justice Director Ben Hannafin there. Immunocompromised people say looser mask exemption criteria means they may need to further restrict their activities in order to stay safe. Under the new rules, exemptions can be handed out for those with hay fever, dizziness, tiredness, those wearing glasses, or people who say masks give them a runny nose. It's an online self-identifying process to request a legally binding card that says you don't need to wear a mask. Tess Brunton has more.
Down in Dunedin, Ali says the pandemic has meant a lot of changes to keep herself and others safe. She's immunocompromised.
Well, it's very scary. I haven't been to a restaurant for I don't know how long, or a cafe. But I'd rather put up with missing out on things than get sick.
She qualifies for a mask exemption under the criteria, but says she's worried about infection.
At the moment, I only go to a few places where I'm fairly sure they won't be crowded, and I don't stand in queues and things like that. But I'll probably have to go back to not going places again.
The Ministry of Health says there is no legal requirement to carry the card and you don't have to show it. A Dunedin resident who asked not to be named says staying COVID-free has been very hard, especially when his family have all had it.
Well, I've got cancer at the moment, so I need to have a mask on. It's saved my life, hopefully. I don't want to get COVID.
He wants to see the exemptions tightened and include school students. COVID arrived via the classroom for his family.
Some people obviously can't wear masks, which is understandable. But I think the majority of people realise, that we've got to keep doing it. We've got to live our lives as well, obviously, but what's the harm of wearing a mask, really, to save people's lives?
Another Dunedin resident who asked to remain anonymous says it's far too easy to get an exemption now.
I believe that you should only get an exemption if it is actually affecting your health in any way possible. A runny nose is not enough, but like for my brother, rashes and massive sores on your face, you should be able to get out of wearing a mask.
In Lower Hutt, Anne was masked up while waiting for her bus.
I'm at the age of life, if I got it, I'd probably die. OK, that's near enough for me anyway, but you're not going to put your head in a noose if you can help it.
She hopes more people will think of others and mask up.
I will protect myself as best I can so that I can live as normal a life as I can, because I don't think this has finished. There'll be another wave, another variant.
But another Lower Hutt resident, Wayne, wants to see mask rules relaxed even further.
Well, I don't think we need to have masks at all for any particular reason, and you can wear them if you want to. If not, why?
He says the wait-and-see attitude is draining on everyone and costing the country.
If we're fully vaccinated, if I get it, I hope that it's over quickly and then the immune system builds up, I'd like to think. Let's get on with life.
In Nelson, Craig is glad people who need exemptions can get them.
Yes, if you have problems with your mask.
And what sort of conditions would you expect to see on a list like that?
All manner of things. Many people have many conditions.
And you think it's a good thing that they're sort of easier to get now than maybe they have been in the past?
Yes.
Barry says exemptions aren't applicable to everyone, but they are needed. He has a few ideas on what should be included on the list.
Skin conditions, I think, primarily. Breathing conditions, like emphysema, stuff like that. I think definitely allergies.
Dr Samantha Merton is the president of the Royal New Zealand College of General Practitioners. She says the new rules are looser than many health professionals probably expected.
The list has some of the very valid reasons and then also the minor irritations of wearing a mask, and then gives them an example of, why you should still be wearing a mask. However, it also gives the option, I still want an exemption card.
Dr Merton says they have to balance the risk of not wearing a mask with COVID in the community with how a mask affects other health concerns. She wants assurance exemptions are given for valid reasons.
Making sure if we're going to have to put in effort to have them get access to service, not contaminate other people, not put staff in jeopardy, then we have to rejig what we'd normally do as far as our normal processes go. You'd want to know that there was a valid reason for why you were doing that. And so when it is that I just can't be bothered and I'm going to get a mask exemption, then that's unfair on all those people who have valid reasons for having a mask exemption.
The Ministry of Health says requesting a face mask exemption card will be a robust process and abusers will face consequences, including fines of up to $12,000. Medical practitioners won't need to sign off on the cards, as it would be too much of a barrier and an additional cost. People can apply online from the end of May.
So let us know what you think of that story from Tess in Dunedin there. Are you still wearing a mask? Are you going out for dinner tonight? Are you planning on wearing one out? Do you wear them in a cafe? School's back on Monday as well, of course, so are the kids going to be wearing them back at school? Is the school making them wear them, or are you going to make them wear them? You can text me, 2101. You can tweet us at checkpointrnz, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Right, now if you think we have a skills shortage here, how desperate must you be if you're offering bonus haircuts and paid dinners out in a bid to attract workers? Well, a company in Western Australia has gone to extreme levels to try and attract electricians. Nixon Electrics is offering a 4-day work week, a $1,000 sign-on bonus, sounds pretty good, along with AirPods and a host of other incentives. Business owner David Faulkner told me, well, he's pretty desperate. I'm only part-time in this job. By the end of this week, I'll be out of it. So what can you offer me? I'm going to be looking for something else next week.
All right, mate, we have. Let me get it up and I'll give you a full rundown, mate. 2 seconds. All right, mate, so we have a 4-day work week, which is optional to 5, depending on what best suits you. We have a $1,000 sign-on bonus, a monthly haircut paid for by us, a $150 dinner voucher to take your wife or partner out for the night each month. We buy you a set of AirPods, pay for a gym or social sport membership, and also a yearly weekend away for you and your partner.
It sounds pretty good. I'll take you up on it. I'll give you a call after the show, actually, and we'll get it sorted out. But in all seriousness, what has compelled you to make such an inviting offer? How dire is it over there at the moment finding electricians?
Yeah, it's very, very, very difficult to find quality. I've just put it on myself to create a little point of difference between myself and my competitors. As employees and quality employees are very scarce, need to try and be different in some way or another. So these ideas were sort of come about due to having such difficulty over the period. At the same time, though, I have employed staff over the last 12 months, but as we are in such a heavy growth stage, trying to find quality staff is important, and trying to put these offers out there is a part of that. Yeah.
So you'll run ragged at the moment?
Yes, definitely.
What does your day look like? What does a day look like for an electrician working in regional Western Australia look like at the moment?
So we're a team of 11 at the moment, we do about 70 to 90 service jobs a week at the minute. We day to day do everything from residential, which is general day to day, Mrs. Smith going to put in a couple of lights, to working on construction of new offices or repairing big machines for industrial factories. So we do pretty diverse kind of work, which is good, but run off our feet and looking for more quality staff members at the minute.
So what's your annual salary or hourly rate? If I sign up, what am I going to get?
Our staff, usually base rates per hour is anything from sort of 37 to 42 an hour, but we obviously run that plus the bonuses, and we do have commission incentives, which do drive the wage up quite dramatically. It's comparative to working up my top guys are comparative to working up north in the mines, pretty much. So we've created some pretty good systems to suit local, and sort of trying to create, obviously, drive their wage prices up to be competitive with those places, as well as creating a work-life balance for our guys, which those bigger companies can't provide.
What about the lifestyle over there? Talk to me about the lifestyle over in WA. Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, so we're in the best part of Australia, in my opinion. We're in the southwest region of Western Australia. So, we're in Bunbury, so hour and a half north, you're in the city in Perth, and about an hour and a half south, you're in the famous Margaret River region, wine, surfing, fishing, breweries, wineries, everything you need. Awesome coastline, farm life. It's got sort of everything in one little area you'll ever need. A little bit of hustle and bustle in the cities, but there's enough you can get away to the country and enjoy the finer things as well. So.
And are we having Friday night drinks, and are there a few work social functions during the year that we can look forward to?
Yeah, of course. So I run, I have KPIs my guys meet. Monthly, if they hit them, I take them out and treat them to different things all the time. We have multiple functions a year, monthly catch-ups at the office with barbecues, the occasional breakfast. And yeah, sort of just sort of monitor as we go. If the guys are doing well in certain areas, and I reward them individually sometimes based on certain things. But there's plenty of social time as well.
What sort of response have you had so far? Is it blowing up?
A bit of a hard one to explain. So, like, I've had probably, I think, 8 applicants over the last 3 days, but not blowing up as much as I thought it would, to be honest. But the workforce over here, the skilled workers are so few and far between. The work the economy has created, there aren't enough skilled workers to fill that at the minute. So, it hasn't blown up as much as I thought it would, but I dare say it's only early days yet, and they'll get a few quality guys apply through it, no doubt.
So long, Checkpoint. I reckon I'm off to be a Sparky in WA as of next week. Business owner Dave Faulkner there. Kia ora, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Nick Trubridge in for Lisa Owen. A multi-million-dollar iwi housing deal to deliver hundreds of affordable homes. Cook Islands police take drastic action against dangerous dogs prowling the streets, and the Black Fern Sevens are getting ready to make their long-awaited return to the pitch this weekend. That's all coming up. Don't forget you can text us on 2101, and you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us on Checkpoint on Facebook, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Now it's time for the headlines with Evie.
The National Party says today's tweaks to the Three Waters change nothing. The government has accepted nearly all of the recommendations from a working group for the controversial reforms. But National's Christopher Luxon says the government hasn't changed its co-governance structure and is hell-bent on driving through its reforms as intended from day one. The government says National is spreading misinformation in its opposition to the reforms. Oranga Tamariki says almost all the children involved in ram raids in recent weeks aren't in school. The agency's Youth Justice Director, Ben Hannafin, told Checkpoint that youth crime is actually down about 60% over the past 5 years. But he says there's no denying the recent spike. Mr Hannafin says about 80% of those involved come from families facing major challenges, and they're working with those who have been arrested. Ukrainian prosecutors have named 10 Russian soldiers suspected of torturing civilians in Bucha. They're accused of taking unarmed civilians hostage, depriving them of food, blindfolding and binding them, and subjecting them to beatings and mock executions. Ukraine's authorities say more than 420 people were killed during Russia's occupation of Bucha. People who say they were bullied, harassed or abused at Fire and Emergency New Zealand are sceptical about a Public Service Commission review of the organisation announced today. They say abusers and people who support them remain at FENZ and nothing will change until they're gone. The Professional Firefighters Union has welcomed the review, which it says has been a long time coming and necessary. And the Health Ministry says the process for obtaining mask exemptions will be robust, with checks and fines against misuse. Some doctors have criticised the exemption card process as too loose, as it allows people to apply for exemptions for almost any reason, from asthma to dry eyes to wearing glasses. Those are the headlines. Our next full news and weather is at 6.
Thanks, Evie. Time for our business news now with Nona Peltier. Nona, consumer confidence has improved a bit, but still hovering near record lows. What are the latest numbers there?
Well, they're not that different than they were the last time we spoke about these numbers. So a little bit better.
in terms of the outlook. Inflation expectation, also a little bit better, but looks still very deeply pessimistic when it comes to whether you're going to buy a major appliance or not. That's not good news for retailers. There's going to be plenty of red flags for retailers to watch out for if this survey indicates that consumer sentiment remains weak, or good news, if we've already hit the bottom and we're coming back up. But you know what? With COVID, we've never been able to accurately predict what's going to happen next. So it's more about paying attention to the signs and reacting appropriately.
Meanwhile, money. The Reserve Bank is saying it's going to revamp the money system to ensure cash remains king. That sounds all right, doesn't it?
I love cash. Cash is king. Yeah. Don't you think?
It's always nice having a bit of cash in your wallet because it's such a... it never happens anymore, does it?
Also, the big thing about cash is about the privacy. No one knows what you spend your cash on.
That's a good point.
As opposed to what you might use your digital payment system for. So, the Reserve Bank has done 3 rounds of consultation on this and have decided cash is going to remain alongside other digital payment systems. So they've got a guy in charge there. His name is Ian Whitford. He's been appointed to the position of, let me just read it carefully. Yeah, that's right. Money and Cash Director. And you might think, what's the difference?
That's a title, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. What's the difference between money and cash, you might ask? Oh, I can tell you.
So just a little bit more on this. Was the plan to get rid of...
Well, there's been, have you noticed that there's some places you go and they say card only, no cash?
Absolutely.
And it used to be you could go along to, find an ATM just any place, can't anymore. In fact, a lot of bank branches have closed down alongside their ATM. So harder to get cash. And this was a concern because for some people, this is really important, the access to real money. Digital currency is called money. Cash is what you put in your wallet. Money is something that you can use a digital payment system for. Now, one of the things that's come out of this consultation is potential for a central bank digital currency. So alongside, say, people have been familiar with, say, Bitcoin. So this would be New Zealand's version of Bitcoin, but it would be backed by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. So it would be similar to currency, any kind of currency. Whether or not they adopt a digital currency, that's still yet to be determined. But whatever happens in this new redesign of the cash and money system, it will include digital payments. So we'll see what happens there, but certainly some changes ahead for the way we spend our money or cash.
Yeah, strange new world with all that digital currency sort of stuff. Not really up to speed on that, but sticking with money, the markets take us.
Let's do that. Okay, well, let's start with the currency first in that case. It had a stronger tone than it did yesterday. So we ended at 65.2 US cents. That's still pretty low, and that's really because of what's happening in the United States with the Federal Reserve promising to be a little bit more aggressive on interest rate hikes. So 75.2 US cents, 91.1 Australian, 52 British pence. In terms of the top 50 index, not too bad. We finished up 8 points to 11,884.
Thanks, Mona. As always, see you next week. Good weekend.
Yeah, and you.
Hey, while we're on that, bit of feedback on money. Nona? I reckon, yeah, bit of feedback on money. Are you still using money, or is card king for you now over having cash in the wallet? A $58 million deal signed between the Crown and an iwi housing provider today is promising to make the dream of home ownership more achievable for Māori. It plans to deliver a minimum of 170 affordable rental homes and more than 30 progressive ownership properties in Taranaki, Tokoroa, Blenheim, Thames, Tāmaki, and Tāmaki Makaurau, sorry. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has the story.
Ka uru ora, a Taranaki and Te Atiawa Iwi Housing and Financial Wellbeing Consortium inked the deal with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and Te Puni Kokiri in New Plymouth this afternoon. Associate Housing Minister Pini Henere says the By Māori for Māori model will be a game changer.
This is groundbreaking. It covers a number of areas from home ownership to rentals, but more importantly, what it will do is unlock intergenerational wealth and aspiration for our people in housing.
Minister Henare says the status quo isn't working and the ka uru ora model is a prototype which it's hoped will be rolled out around the country.
So what makes this different is this is a high trust model that looks towards iwi and partners in community to make sure that we can deliver housing. The government has a role to play in that, and in this particular initiative, it's really just to come in and support it with capital funding, which is really important to allow them to unlock housing for themselves.
$55.1 million of the funding is for building and renovating homes, with the remaining $2.7 million set aside for financial education. Iwi will provide the land and pay for the installation of utility services where required. In 2018, about 31% of Māori owned their own home, compared to about 52% of the general population. Ka Uru Ora Chair Jamie Tuta says the focus on affordable rentals will enable whānau earning between $40,000 and $70,000 to save for their own place.
So we identified that as a key gap and an opportunity to be able to provide secure tenure, a 5 to 7 year period where they have certainty, where their children can engage in the local community school, and from there working alongside the whānau to look at what the opportunities are to transition them into hopefully progressive home ownership to own their own home.
Mr Tuta says rents will be set at about 80% of market rates and where possible be capped at 30% of household income. Te Waka McLeod is Ka Uru Ora's engagement manager. It's her job to get alongside whānau and deliver the Finance 101 message.
If we're wanting to understand what it means to own a home, we need to understand everything around our finances. I think that's something that we haven't been taught at a young age, unless you've come from that type of whānau. But in my experiences in a small community, that hasn't been the case.
Ms McLeod says when ready, Ka Uru Ora will provide whānau with a deposit that will be paid back to iwi over time. Te Kotahitanga o Te Atiawa Chair Liana Potu says it puts Māori on the track to home ownership.
It's about a savings program, there's financial literacy, it's empowering our whānau so that once they're on that journey towards home ownership, they've got all the tools they need.
The government funding, which will be delivered alongside iwi investment, forms part of the $730 million Whai Kaianga, Whai Oranga Māori housing budget to improve housing outcomes for Māori. The first Ka Uru Ora homes are due to be completed by June the 30th next year.
Time for some of your feedback on masks now, and there's plenty of it. There always is on this issue. This person says, absolutely still wearing a mask. It does provide some protection for me and those I come into close contact with. And then someone on the other side of the fence. I think the new mask directives are ludicrous. This person says, there are many overseas studies to show that they are highly ineffective and have many negative effects. Most countries, UK, USA, etc., have stopped mandating masks now. And on the other side of that, anti-maskers are worse than anti-vaxxers. Total unscientific nonsense for such a minor community effort. Sad, this person says. Right, to the United States now, where new details have been revealed about the months-long struggle to get former US Marine Trevor Reed out of Russia. In the weeks since the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, relations between Moscow and Russia have sunk to an all-time low. In the effort to free Reed after more than 2 years of captivity took negotiations at all levels of government on both sides. But as CNN's Matthew Chance reports, it took everyone by surprise when he was traded for Russian pilot Konstantin Yaroshenko.
This is the moment Trevor Reed, looking frail, took his first steps towards freedom. Shown on Russian television, being escorted by masked security guards and onto a waiting plane. Amid fraught US-Russian relations, this is an unexpected win.
This is a good day for the United States. It also speaks to President Biden's commitment and this entire administration's commitment to do everything we can to secure the release of Americans who are held hostage.
Trevor Reed is a former US Marine, imprisoned for supposedly endangering the life of Russian police. Prosecutors said he assaulted an officer after a night of heavy drinking. When he was sentenced by a Moscow court to a harsh 9 years, his shocked Russian girlfriend broke down. This is the reputation of Russia, she screamed, for being escorted out. Now, from Texas, Reed's parents could finally express their relief, but also their continuing concern.
The biggest issue is his health. If you've seen any of the videos today of him getting out of the FSB van to get into the FSB jet,
he looks terrible to us. I mean, as his parents, we know he does not look well. He's very thin.
He was walking strange, and it looked like they had to help him get up in the airplane.
Yeah, he didn't look good. So I understand there's some medical personnel on the plane with him, and they're checking him out.
Of course, Trevor Reed's freedom wasn't for free. This is the dramatic moment broadcast on Russian television when the American was swapped for a Russian convict held in a US jail. You can see Reed on the left walking towards the US plane. Crossing back into Russian hands, Konstantin Yaroshenko, sentenced to 20 years in the US for conspiracy to smuggle drugs. His conviction in 2011 and subsequent treatment has been a major thorn in US-Russian ties. 2 years ago, amid talk of a swap, CNN spoke to Yaroshenko in an exclusive interview from his US federal prison, when he accused US authorities of illegally abducting him, then torturing him in custody. Allegations US officials deny. I can talk about gross violations of fundamental laws, international rights, and what the Americans did in my case regarding extradition, he tells me. There was no extradition, do you understand? These are very serious things. I have not violated a single law. I'm not some kind of soulless creature. I'm not an animal that can be kidnapped, beaten, tortured, and then illegally transported to the United States, Yaroshenko said. He also told me he believed he was a pawn in a political game between Washington and Moscow. A game that has, for him and for Trevor Reed, now finally come to an end.
A bit of quick traffic now. State Highway 1 is closed just north of Foxton after a serious crash. Emergency services were called to the crash involving two vehicles at the intersection of State Highway 1 and Motuiti Road just before 5 p.m. this evening. The serious crash unit has been advised and the road will be closed for some time there. Diversions are in place and motorists are advised to avoid the area and expect delays. Right, back to Three Waters now, where the contentious reforms have been given the go-ahead, but with some tweaks in an attempt to appease some councils worried about losing control of the assets. Drinking, waste and stormwater systems will be rolled into 4 big water entities instead of 67 councils. Local Government Minister Nanaia Mahuta says it's time councils got on board. Selwyn Mayor Sam Broughton joins me now. Evening, Mr. Broughton. Are you on board?
Yeah. The good news to hear that the government is listening to the concerns that have been raised by local government. And the announcement today shows that they're willing to take seriously the working group's recommendations. So, yeah, I think that part of it is really good news.
Are you, because of course your council, it was certainly the opposite on board, before today, you're relatively satisfied now with how things are shaping up?
We're not very convinced that there's a lot of benefit in this for Selwyn in the short to medium term. The changes that the government's looking to make are changes that we made here in Selwyn about 6 or 7 years ago, and they've proved really, really good for us. We've got really young infrastructure and really low water costs. So the decision to do this nationally is a national decision, and I can understand why government might want to do that. But locally, it's hard to see short to medium term benefits for us as Selwyn District.
Yeah, and you talk about the quality of your assets down there in Selwyn at the moment. You've also, the quality of your water is very good too. I'm looking at the New Zealand Water Report here. Selwyn ranked right up the top. How have you managed to do that?
We're really pleased with that sort of result. We've got some really young pipes. There's been a lot of growth. And a lot of our developers are putting in good infrastructure as growth has continued. So we've gone from a population of just over 40,000 10 years ago to over 75,000 now. So with that change comes a lot of brand new infrastructure. In the end, that does age, but at the moment, that puts us in a really good position. Notwithstanding, we've got some townships in our district that the water is below what we would expect, and we're working hard to fix that too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're speaking, of course, about the people in Springfield as one example. I'm reading a piece here, some parents saying that they can't even bathe their children in it. What's gone wrong there? I mean, it's all good and well having this title of best water quality in the country, but the people of Springfield, well, they're obviously not happy.
No, and I wouldn't be happy drinking or having to turn on a tap and have that water come out at my place either. A number of things have gone on there, some natural movement in the river, a slip upstream, and things that have been out of our control. We've got about 4 or 5 different irons in the fire at the moment to try and fix it. Some of them short term, some of it will take maybe the next 12 months to implement around a new filtration piece, but we're confident that by July we'll have a new pipeline in place that will bring water from a neighbouring township to connect into the supply in Springfield, and we'll be able to fix the matter for those people.
Is it good enough though? You mentioned a 12-month timeline there. They've already been waiting a year. Is that good enough?
We wish we'd done, we can always do better. And so I guess we're looking at wanting to see how we can fix it now. Some of the things we have tried to fix the situation with haven't been as successful as we've liked, and we've been working against floods in a river that has changed its course. So putting that back where it needs to be has been a key part of it too. Watching weather events are certainly things outside of our control.
Absolutely, challenging for sure. But what could you have done better? You mentioned things you could have done better.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's listening to the community and understanding what's required there. There were issues with the tanker early on that needed to be done sooner, and hearing where there's individual families that have been affected and the showering opportunities for them, I don't think we've done as well as they could have been early on. I think we're on top of that now, but the immediate effects of those sorts of changes when we're dealing with water, such an essential part of day-to-day life, it's easy to look back in hindsight and think next time would improve that.
So what are the fixes in the meantime? You mentioned tankers there. Have you got people using tankers still after, a fairly long period of time?
So we're seeing a constant improvement in the water supply at the moment. We've managed to re-divert the river, which is showing promising signs. Key piece over the next 8 weeks is putting in the new pipeline, as I said, and then there's a brand new filtration plant that's happening at the same time. So that's the one that will take maybe the next 12 months to implement. But if we can bring water from the neighbouring town of Sheffield, that'll certainly make things better a lot sooner.
Do you think locals there in Springfield still have confidence in their council after the handling of this particular matter?
I think the key thing is we're trying to make water safe for that community to drink so that they can turn it on. I'd be pretty unhappy with the council if that was if I was living there, and I can understand why people might want to have a view that we haven't dealt with them in a way that they might expect. All I can say is we're doing the best that we can. We'll put a whole lot of effort and resource into this. We're completely focused on the Springfield Township, and although there's so many good things going on in Selwyn, one event in one space in a town like this isn't good enough regardless of how good you might be on the other side.
Thanks, Mr. Broughton. That is Selwyn Mayor Sam Broughton there, of course, speaking on Three Waters and also some water issues that they are still having after quite some time down in Springfield in the South Island. Lockdowns in China are now affecting more than 160 million people. Shanghai is seeing the worst of the outbreak, reporting upwards of 10,000 new cases a day. Yet China is still not budging from its zero COVID approach, even as people openly complain about the impact on their lives. The BBC's Stephen McDonald has more.
Beijing's 22 million residents have been lining up for 3 rounds of compulsory COVID testing over 7 days, prompted by only dozens of infections. You can see people here, office workers, retirees, all masked up, waiting their turn. Though the queues can at times be long, they'll move quickly, because China has become remarkably efficient at this mass testing.
I just finished my test. I think Beijing will be fine. Just don't go mixing with others too much.
We will have no big problems here. Our country's COVID control looks after ordinary people's well-being.
Chinese people, by and large, had until recently trusted that the government knew what it was doing when it comes to coronavirus prevention. But this is starting to fray. We're into the 3rd year of citywide stay-at-home lockdowns, which are only becoming more strict, and pandemic fatigue is setting in, prompting little acts of rebellion where compliance was once the norm. On social media, footage is being shared showing customers running through a shopping centre. Word has got out that there's been an infection there, meaning they all could be sent to a quarantine centre, so people are getting out while they can. At the main doors, white-clad officials, head-to-toe in protective clothing, try to hold them inside, but the crowd pushes past. In Shanghai, residents have been smashing down temporary fences which have been put up to keep their housing blocks isolated. The shambolic lockdown of 25 million residents there, making food and other daily essentials hard to get, has led to widespread ridicule of the government on social media platforms. At a media conference in Beijing, a police officer explains the arrests they've increasingly had to make of those who've breached lockdown, those who've lied about their whereabouts, and those who've been spreading rumours. In China, the crime of spreading rumours can just mean saying things publicly the Communist Party doesn't like. While the rest of the world has moved towards a form of living with COVID, this country has stubbornly stuck to its zero COVID approach, attempting to return every outbreak back to zero transmissions. More and more people are asking why. There are two main reasons: high-level party politics and vaccines. Professor Ivan Hong from Hong Kong University's Department of Medicine says his city achieved substantial herd immunity following a large Omicron variant outbreak, infecting more than half the population, and that this has allowed for considerable opening up. He says for mainland China to change tack, a much higher level of booster shots is required.
A large proportion of the elderly people have perhaps received 1 or 2 doses of the vaccination. And that was perhaps dated back to more than a year ago. And most of the antibody have dropped to a level that is suboptimal against the Omicron. And the most important thing, of course, is to hopefully use this time to get all the elderly people at least vaccinated with the 3rd dose.
Police in the Cook Islands have resorted to shooting stray dogs amid a spate of dog attacks on locals. Thousands of unregistered animals are roaming freely, menacing and attacking people and livestock. The SPCA is against the use of firearms, but are too under-resourced to provide a more humane alternative. Alicia Foon has the details.
With over 2,000 dogs wandering the island, Rarotonga has a dog problem. In just the last 2 months, police have had 23 complaints, including from 6 people who were bitten by roaming dogs. Cook Islands Senior Sergeant Napuau says some are household pets, others are wild or have been abandoned.
Some of them are biting people, some are just rushing after people. It has been an issue in the past, but I think everybody just left it like that for a while until all these complaints start coming in and everybody is now getting their acts together.
There's meant to be a 2-dog limit per household, but it's rarely enforced. Police also have authority under the current law to destroy dogs by using a firearm.
When there is an offence, then the police have to put down the dogs.
Last year, a dog control committee was formed, made up of the SPCA, Tourism Corporation, the Ministry of Agriculture and Police. But SPCA Welfare Officer Mata Noroa says they're not all on the same page.
We definitely don't agree with the way the police are sort of handling the situation, and we have voiced our concerns to the police and the wider community. But yeah, it is very hard for us because we don't have the sort of, I suppose, the resources and that to sort of step in and sort of take on, all the dogs that are out there, whether they're stray or wandering.
He says they're not moving fast enough.
The main thing for now, is trying to get these dogs neutered and desexed. There's only, 15,000 or so people here on Rarotonga. If we don't get the desexing controlled, in 10 years' time, there's going to be more dogs than people on this island.
Tourism Corporation Acting Chief Executive Carla Eagleton says aggressive dogs are impacting visitor experiences on the island. She says 10 years ago there was a very successful animal program for desexing, but it stopped because there wasn't enough long-term funding.
We're looking to do everything that we can to mitigate and manage wandering dogs. The dog management program in the Cook Islands on Rarotonga has had its stumbling blocks. We identify and highlight that there are different ways to approach this. The great thing is that we've all agreed to sit down together and work it out, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to move forward on this.
The SPCA says a law change is necessary to force owners to take more responsibility of their pets, to prevent puppies, and want police to stop using guns on dogs.
It's not the animal's fault. So, if say there's a dog attack or something like that, we need to make the owners more accountable for it, giving them really hefty fines and sort of making them responsible. Because at the moment, it's sort of a grey area. So, people aren't being sort of punished.
A desexing program starts from May to August this year, which is expected to desex 250 dogs.
Time for some more of your feedback now. First of all, on cash money, of course. Cash, this person says, who would ever trust a magnetic strip? Cash is still king, never want to lose. How can we give street-based charities, pocket money for kids, fundraising for market days, etc.? Pay wave fees are exorbitant. They are now. The number of shops you go into now and there's an extra charge on top for using pay wave seems to have increased. This person says cash for small purchases and buskers as well. Masks. The comments keep coming in on masks. Exemptions should only be granted for the same conditions that allow your surgeon and theatre staff to be exempted when operating upon you, Jim says from Papamoa. Someone else here says a mask protects others as much as ourselves, and to not wear one because your glasses steam up or you don't want to is simply selfish in the extreme. This person says their kids are returning to school from next week for the first time since February, and that they will absolutely be wearing masks.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, kia ora tātou, ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Oranga Tamariki says almost all the children involved in ram raids in recent weeks aren't attending school. Police say the children ram raiding or breaking into shops and malls are often looking for thrills or for videos they can post on social media. This week, 4 children, one as young as 7, were caught breaking into a Hamilton mall at 1 o'clock in the morning. Oranga Tamariki's Youth Justice Director, Ben Hannafin, says usually the teens come from complex families.
So 80% of them are coming from families where there's violence. Over 90% of them have learning difficulties. Almost all of them, with this population from the ram raids, are not in school. So they're suffering a whole lot of challenges and making some bad decisions.
Some of the children have been referred to Oranga Tamariki. The National Party says today's tweaks to the Three Waters reforms change nothing. The government has accepted nearly all of the recommendations from a working group, but the co-governance structure will stay, with mana whenua and councils given an equal number of seats on a representation group, which sets the entity's strategic direction but has no say in operational matters. National leader Christopher Luxon says the government is hell-bent on driving through its reforms as intended from day one.
The tweaks are irrelevant. The tweaks are not meaningful. The divisive co-governance structure remains. The bigger issue is it's an asset grab, and they're taking assets that ratepayers have paid for and that local councils have been owning for some time, and they want to take them off them.
The government says National is spreading misinformation. The Health Ministry says people who misuse new mask exemptions could face fines or other serious penalties. Some doctors have criticised the exemption card process as too loose, as it allows people to apply for exemptions for almost any reason, from asthma to dry eyes to wearing glasses. A ministry spokesperson says the application system will be robust and there'll be checks against misuse. Anyone who fraudulently misuses the process would be in breach of the COVID-19 Public Health Response Act and could be sentenced to up to 6 months in prison or fined up to $12,000. The Christchurch City Council is being sued by the owners of a badly flawed building whose engineer has been sanctioned. The council consented but then refused to give final sign-off on the 8-storey office block at 230 High Street. Phil Pennington reports.
In the latest twist in a saga of seismic flaws, the building owners have now filed High Court proceedings against the council. They're also acting against others, including the now disgraced and deregistered structural design engineer Ju Cho. Several reviews found the design is flawed, and a report to the owners says the building can't be fixed but must be demolished. The council says it is defending the claim and does not accept the block has to be rebuilt. Rockwell Group has been reported to be the owner. It has not responded to RNZ's calls.
Invercargill residents in the Richmond area are being asked to check their properties for a knife that may have been used in a fatal stabbing. Chad Parekura died after being attacked on Don Street last Saturday. His companion was also injured and has been discharged from hospital. Detective Senior Sergeant Greg Baird says a 20 to 30 centimetre knife may have been discarded in the area. He says the block that includes Lawn, Yarrow, Tay and Lithgow streets are of particular interest. Anyone using sports fields and facilities in the area is also being asked to keep an eye out. Papua New Guinea is working towards establishing a human rights commission. The move is a significant one for the nation, which addresses several recommendations from the United Nations Human Rights Council. The PNG government met last week with the Pacific Community Group to develop a plan which will set the framework for the initiative. Amazon has posted its first quarterly loss since 2015, prompting a steep drop in its share price. It reported a net loss of $5.8 billion. The BBC's James Clayton reports.
During the pandemic, business boomed for Amazon. It could barely find enough workers to fill its warehouses. As people stayed away from stores, they turned to online shopping. Amazon's share price ballooned and the company looked unstoppable. But things have changed. For one, its huge investment in the electric lorry maker Rivian has so far been disastrous. The disappointing quarterly figures come as Google and Netflix also posted poor financial results for the first 3 months of this year. Big Tech's pandemic bounce looks to be finally over.
And there are significant delays on a Northland highway after a logging truck rolled. The eastbound lane of State Highway 14 near Tangiteroria, is blocked. The police say it could take some time to clear and motorists should avoid the area. That's the news.
Often the dolphins are dragged out at these times of war where security around the ocean is really important. They know how to attack a person. You know, that whole cute cuddly thing about dolphins, I think those would be the last 2 words I'd ever use to describe dolphins.
Would it? So a glowing review that's made up?
There are certainly businesses who are offering fake reviews as well as businesses that are, of course, purchasing fake reviews. That's, I guess, the market in action.
Up to date if you're up late. Lately with Karen Hay every weeknight from 10 on RNZ National.
You're back with Nick Trubridge on Checkpoint next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday. Northland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and a few showers, mainly in the east. Mostly fine for Auckland, a few showers mainly north of the city. From Waikato to Wellington, also Bay of Plenty and the central high country. Fine apart from areas of cloud or fog morning and night. Cloudy periods for Gisborne with isolated showers. Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, fine spells are increasing this afternoon and isolated showers about the Wairoa district are clearing overnight. For Buller and Westland, mostly fine. Cloud and showers developing from the glaciers southwards this evening and may spread farther north tomorrow evening. For Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago, Southland and Fiordland, fine apart from areas of cloud or fog morning and night. However, it's mostly cloudy with showers about the fjords. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy. The time is 6 minutes past 6. Our next news headlines are at 6:30.
Thanks, Evie. No mai hoki mai. I'm Nick Trubridge in for Lisa Owen. A Christchurch resident who lives and works near the burnt-out wastewater plant sending a stench over the city says she's amazed there's been no warning on the health impact. Yesterday, Christchurch City Council heard tearful pleas from residents who have been tormented by the foul odour for 6 months. The council's main message was there will be no quick fix. Our reporter Rachel Graham has more.
Andrew Walker lives and works in Bromley near the wastewater plant, which burnt down in November. He says the stench has been an almost constant presence.
You've been lying in bed asleep and next thing you wake up and it's like someone's got a bag of poo over your head sort of thing, and it's just awful. You wake up and you can't go back to sleep because it stinks.
The stink has also affected people's health.
People are getting headaches, sore eyes, lung problems. I mean, it's shit for sake. It's and shit that's been treated with chemicals, and then there's also the smell of the burnt plastic, which sort of comes with it. fiberglass from when the thing went on fire.
Mr Walker says he's surprised there is no health warning in place or advice on how to limit exposure. The Canterbury District Health Board issued health advice on November the 2nd after the initial fire at the wastewater plant on the impact of the smoke. Since then, there's been no specific advice and no one from the DHB was available to comment today. Senior lecturer in health sciences at Canterbury University, Wendy Maddox, is an expert in aromatherapy and patient care and says in the same way a positive smell can be therapeutic, a bad smell can have negative effects.
So it's almost like a flipped effect that if you're having exposed to negative smells, particularly prolonged exposure, can really impact mood, sense of well-being, but also some maybe associated with memory and things as well. You connect with that smell or a bad memory at some other point in your life as well.
And the problem isn't just affecting those in Bromley. Those in New Brighton, Huntsbury Hill, Papanui, Sumner and many other parts of the city have reported smelling it. Reports of offensive odours have been coming in to Canterbury Regional Council's Smell It app. In a statement, the council's zone delivery lead, Ruth Sarson, says since the fire they have received 3,363 complaints, which are likely to be related to the wastewater plant. Just over 2,000 of those in the last 2 months. She says they are proactively monitoring the Bromley area twice a week.
We continue to monitor the odour through all the available channels and work closely with Christchurch City Council to ensure plans and timelines for remediation are upheld. Our intention is to ensure there is open communication and exchange of information between us and Christchurch City Council. We're very conscious that this is a serious and stressful matter for residents, especially those in the Bromley community.
The Christchurch City Council will announce the contractor to start removing the burnt waste material next week and has promised fortnightly reports on how the community is coping and suggestions on assistance.
People who say they've suffered bullying, harassment and abuse at Fire and Emergency New Zealand are sceptical about a new review of the workplace culture. The independent review was announced today, 3 years after a damning report by retired Judge Carol Shaw found harassment and bullying was rife at all levels across all regions. Naomi Arnold reports.
Complainants we spoke to today were cautious about the independent review, worried it's a box-ticking exercise that won't lead to lasting change. RNZ has spoken to more than a dozen complainants who say nothing has changed since the Shaw report and in some cases things have deteriorated. One former firefighter, who says she was sexually assaulted, believes the culture won't change until FENZ gets rid of the abusers and their supporters she says are among its 14,000 staff. These are the complainant's words, but not her voice.
Reviews are often used to look at culture, but that isn't what this is about. It's about accountability, so it has to be sheeted home to the people that do the wrongdoing, so you can hold them to account so they're not there anymore. And that's how you get a new organisation. All the victims need to be heard.
Tristan Roberts was a 2017 Kiwibank local hero and spent a decade serving in the fire service, St John, and as an honorary fishery officer. He left the fire service after saying he saw bullying and abuse go unpunished. He says while he has some hope, he remains dubious and wasn't mincing words giving us his view.
I have no faith, trust or confidence in anything that the fire service touches because historically they have always protected the organisation. They're not looking for the truth. They're looking to protect their status in the community, which is, one of the most trusted professions. So they're protecting the brand.
In a staff memo leaked to RNZ, the new FENZ board chair, Rebecca Cohen, said she had requested the investigation as a follow-up to the 2018 Shaw report. The email said the work was challenging and it would take time to achieve lasting and meaningful change, but the board wanted a truly positive and inclusive workplace culture. The New Zealand Professional Firefighters Union National Secretary Watty Watson says the report is a vindication for all the victims who have been forced to go to the media over how FENZ was handling complaints. The union says FENZ is yet to investigate allegations of bullying and harassment levelled at the CEO of the United Fire Brigades Association, Bill Butzbach. An inquiry was dropped after terms of reference could not be agreed with the complainants.
Those matters are still outstanding, and I think for everybody involved there needs to be a proper
investigation over what is actually alleged and how it has been dealt with in order to make some findings and find a resolution.
RNZ has contacted Butzbach for his response. The Public Service Commission review is due to be finished in November.
Ukraine says several Russian missiles have hit Kyiv as UN Chief Antonio Guterres is in the city for talks with Volodymyr Zelensky. One of the rockets landed near the hotel where he's staying, but he and his delegation weren't affected. With more from the Ukrainian capital, here's the BBC's Sarah Rainsford.
It was like a message from Moscow. The first missile strike on Kiev in 2 weeks. A residential building was hit here and civilians wounded, right when the UN chief was in town. Earlier, Antonio Guterres had been on the edge of Kiev, witnessing the destruction there from Russia's war. It is breathtaking. In Irpin, there are ruins everywhere you turn. Ukrainian families came under fire here in their own homes. Antonio Guterres was taken to Bucha too, a name that's now synonymous with massacre.
There were a lot of dead bodies in the streets. And
when Russian troops occupied this town, locals dug a mass grave in the churchyard for civilians shot in the streets. Mr. Guterres called war evil and absurd.
I am glad that the International Criminal Court is seized of this situation, that the prosecutor's office was already here. I fully support the International Criminal Court and I appeal to the Russian Federation to accept to cooperate.
Secretary General, you're welcome. He got a warm welcome at the presidential palace. Volodymyr Zelensky had been annoyed Mr. Guterres went to Moscow first, when Vladimir Putin won't accept any talk of Russian atrocities. But it seems the UN could report progress on helping the last people trapped in Mariupol.
We dedicated much of our time to this issue, and like the relatives of those trapped at Azovstal, I believe we will have a successful result, bringing people back alive.
In Bucha, the morgue is still receiving bodies exhumed from shallow graves, gathering ever more evidence of war crimes. Some of the dead here are just numbers for now, still waiting to be identified. And people are still searching databases for their loved ones, a month after Russian forces suddenly withdrew. Grigory just found his son. He tells me Vladimir was shot, then burned. Only his bones are left to bury. At the town cemetery, Ludmila described how her husband was killed with a single shot to the head. She still has his hat with the bullet holes. Valery had just come out of their bomb shelter to make a phone call. At last, Ludmila can give him a proper burial in the graveyard, not their garden. In Bucha alone, more than 400 civilians were killed.
They should be prosecuted. They have to be. But who knows? Putin should be first, and his band of war criminals. This has happened because no one punished Russia sooner, and Russia corrupted the whole world with its oil and its money.
There are already so many personal tragedies in Ukraine. In a war that Russia launched and shows no sign it's ready to stop.
It's 6:17 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Are you looking to buy a puppy online? Well, police are warning Kiwis to beware of a cryptocurrency con. They've recently seen a staggering rise in online trading scams. In one of the latest swindles, people are paying thousands of crypto dollars for a pet that doesn't exist. Detective Senior Sergeant Chris Allen says he did a double take when he heard about it.
Essentially, it's when prospective pet owners are looking to buy a pet, they are engaging with breeders online via emails, social media, those sorts of things, and being strung along the whole way. including paying deposits and those sorts of things, when all along there is no puppy, and the scammers are asking for more and more money.
And so these are ads that people are coming across on Trade Me, Facebook, when they're looking to buy a puppy?
I think it's more open source inquiries that they're probably doing, internet searches, those sorts of things. Those trading platforms like Trade Me, I've got a lot more checks and balances in there, so they're quite good trading platforms, and they've got some of those consumer protections. There is a lot of other avenues. People are obviously being approached. Some of this can just be on social media as well.
And what sorts of sums have people lost out on here? How much money are some people losing?
It's definitely in the thousands of dollars. Usually there's a $2,000 deposit. Then there'll be some more follow-up fees for either vaccinations, that sort of thing. This is an emerging trend that we're seeing. We've had at least half a dozen reports of this in Auckland City District, but I'll guarantee you there'll be more elsewhere around the country. So, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and that's on top of the emotional roller coaster these new puppy owners are going through as well.
And so how are they asking people to make these transfers? Is it always crypto, or is it cash as well? What are we looking at?
Yes, the ones we've seen here are crypto, and that's what's slightly unusual about it, especially when the breeders are still purporting to be in New Zealand, as well as sending the new dog or the new animal from one location to another, insisting on payment via cryptocurrency and trying to drive the owners away, or the new owners, the buyers, away from depositing in a New Zealand bank account, which of course is identifiable, into crypto, which has a sort of an inherent anonymity with it.
So are people who have been caught out by this, are they already active, I suppose, crypto traders, for want of a better phrase, or are they being compelled to sort of set accounts up?
Well, look, I'm not too sure specifically about that. Cryptocurrency is something that's definitely been used more and more in society, and for a lot of legitimate purpose. Whether or not these people are being compelled, I don't have the answer to that, but it's certainly what's evident in this scam.
So what are the telltale signs here? What should people be looking out for?
It's really around the seller. They might have a lack of credentials. Their profile might be very light in terms of detail behind that, or references. Sometimes communication reverts to messaging apps that have an international phone number associated with it. Sometimes it can be the approach. It can be cold call from the scammers to the pet owners. Poorly constructed emails, not the sort of stuff that you'd expect from a reputable dog breeder. There's also mention of transportation companies that a simple Google search will reveal their link to this type of scam.
And in terms of people who have been caught out by this, how have they been led down the garden path? Is it sort of they've paid this deposit and then once they've been asked for more money, they've sort of realised something's amiss?
Yeah, essentially. And when it comes time for delivery, there is more increasing hidden costs that come about, the insistence on the cryptocurrency. And then when they've tried to make further inquiries to either get their money back or delivery dates coming and going, that's when they realise that they've been scammed.
Yeah, Detective Senior Sergeant Chris Allen there, just with a bit of a warning if you're looking at buying a puppy online. Right, a little bit more of your feedback now on masks. This person writes, as a nurse, I have to wear an N95 for 12 hours. Yep, it's uncomfortable. My nose gets sore, marks are left on my face, but I do it gladly to protect my patients. Think of others, this person says. And the inequity that seems to be emerging between schools is gut-wrenching, this person writes. As usual, while schools in high-income suburbs will be protecting their tamariki and keeping masks, the most disadvantaged kids have been abandoned by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. We will see the impact of this for years, perhaps generations to come. Keep your feedback on masks coming as well. Right, to the UK now, where a group of men in the British Parliament have been called animals by the country's Attorney-General. An unnamed Conservative MP has been accused of looking at porn in the House of Commons. The BBC's Chris Mason has more.
Parliament is being renovated, a never-ending building site, scaffolding and hard hats. But what about the culture inside? Does that need modernising too? Today, a Cabinet Minister told us about some of the men she works with.
There are some bad apples who are out of order, who behave like animals and are bringing Parliament into disrepute, to be honest. So I don't think we should be saying there's a pervasive culture. That's not my experience. There are certain individuals who are behaving in an unacceptable way.
The Prime Minister added it was obviously unacceptable for an MP to watch pornography while here in the House of Commons, a claim made by a minister about a fellow unnamed Conservative MP. The government's now suggesting it's investigated by Parliament's independent complaints process. Labour say...
I think it's very good that we've got an independent system, and obviously that requires anonymity. This is an unusual case because the Tory party knows who this individual is. I think that they should deal with it and deal with it sooner rather than later and take appropriate action.
Ministers have promised appropriate action once an investigation is finished. Meanwhile, Sir Keir said it was deeply concerning an MP who wants to remain anonymous has alleged a member of his shadow cabinet had described her as a secret weapon because women want to be her friend and men want to sleep with her. Let's be blunt, this is a strange workplace. Who is an MP's boss? Ultimately, it's you, voters. But what does that mean between elections? The current complaint system was set up 4 years ago following criticisms about how claims of sexual harassment by MPs were dealt with.
We need to bring people to account. We need to protect staff and other members of Parliament so they have an independent complaint process. But it needs to be seen to operate at pace.
And yes, loads of people here say investigations take ages, denying alleged victims and perpetrators answers and justice. And there's a broader point here, that the reputation of politics is dragged into the gutter. Scotland's First Minister said that has consequences.
We will rue the day we make it more difficult and less attractive for women to come forward for election to public office. It is time to draw a line in the sand, and it's time for men, not all men are misogynists, but misogyny comes from men, and it's time for them to change.
For plenty, that change is not happening anywhere near fast enough.
Look out, World Series, that is, because the Black Ferns Sevens are finally back. After an absence of more than 800 days due to the pandemic, the New Zealand women's side returned to the circuit in Canada this weekend. And as Felicity Reid reports, the Black Ferns are coming back with plenty of gold medal firepower at their disposal.
Saeli, as the siren goes, Saeli to put a bow on it for New Zealand.
817 days. That's how long it's been since the Black Fern Sevens last stacked on the World Series. A comprehensive win in the final of the 2020 tournament in Sydney. Many of the same faces remain for their long-awaited return to the circuit, including captain Sarah Hirini.
It feels pretty amazing, to be honest. It's nice to be in Canada, to travel, and then it's been awesome being able to get back into rugby and just seeing other countries, other players you haven't seen in a couple of years.
After so long away, it's not just the chance to get back on the field that's exciting.
We're obviously really lucky with what we do. We fly business class, and when you get back on a seat like that, you're like, holy, I get to live my dream again. And like you just see everyone's energy rise, and then you arrive at like a amazing hotel. I'm like, look at the view that we've got.
While the perks are nice, this dominant Black Ferns outfit are under no illusion as to what awaits them on their return. The six-time champs may not have played in the World Series for more than 2 years, but they did add an Olympic gold medal last year to their already impressive resume. Hirini says the team are determined last year's success in Tokyo won't create complacency.
There was quite a few of us that worked 10 years for that dream and for that to become a reality. Like, that's really, really special for us. But then the target becomes on your back. I'm definitely not going to sit back and say I'm an Olympic champion and I think things are going to happen. Like, we now know that we have to continue to evolve and change our game if we want to continue to win.
One player keen to join that run of success is Jasmine Hotham. The 21-year-old played her one and only World Series event at the last event for the team in early 2020. Hotham describes her past 2 years as a beautiful journey.
I'm so lucky that every day we play a World Series. We train against the very best in the world. So 2 years of massive growth, ups and downs, non-selection for Olympics. From where I left off in 2020 to where I am now, it's massive.
With 11 of the Tokyo team on this trip to Canada, Hotham is one of the few there who weren't part of the gold medal winning squad. But Hirini says it's a mixture of all that experience and those snapping at their heels, which has the team ready to make a statement on their return.
Our experiences of pressure moments, of winning in tough games, but our hunger and our drive from the girls who haven't necessarily got the minutes or experience on the World Series continue to grow the group. And if you watch our trainings, they are absolutely brutal because people want your spot.
Hirini says rival teams also want their shot at the Olympic champions in Canada this weekend. Pool opponents England, USA and Fiji will be the first to get a crack when action gets underway in Langford on Sunday.
Yeah, back the Black Ferns for sure. A little bit more of your feedback before we go on masks. This person writes, masks, yes, it is so much nicer driving the cab and not having people spit over you when they talk, when they cough, when they sneeze. Most people spit when they talk, but it's normally such fine spit that they don't notice it. But feeling it on your face and arms is not a nice thing for the recipient. That's from Eric. And one more piece here. If we listen to the science, it's clear that correct mask wearing with quality masks protects yourself and others from airborne viruses. That's it from us. We will see you again on Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, I'm Evie Ashton. Several Russian missile strikes have hit Kiev for the first time in 2 weeks. They came amid a visit by the UN chief Antonio Guterres to the Ukrainian capital. President Volodymyr Zelensky says it shows no one in the country can relax. The Health Ministry says people who misuse new mask exemptions could face fines or other serious penalties. And State Highway 1 just north of Foxton in Horowhenua has been closed due to a serious crash. 2 vehicles collided at the intersection of the highway and Motsuiti Road.